For 3 days, the world held its breath. The Strait of Hormuz, the lifeblood of the global economy, was dead silent. Not a single barrel of oil had passed through this critical artery. Let's be perfectly clear right from the start. The events you're about to hear are a speculative military analysis. This is a what-if scenario that never actually happened. Real-world records from 2026 show no such blockade and no such conflict. But just 72 hours earlier, in our story, Iran's massive naval force had swarmed these waters. Now, it was gone, vanished. This is the minute-by-minute story of a pre-planned Allied operation, a literal trap, and how, in a single day, it systematically erased Iran's entire naval and missile threat from the map. To understand how a day like this could even be possible, we need to rewind. We need to look at the ambition, the geography, and the one fatal miscalculation that turned Iran's greatest strength into a cage. For decades, military planners have obsessed over one of the most dangerous flashpoints on the planet, the 21-mile-wide Strait of Hormuz. For Iran, this narrow choke point has always been its ultimate leverage. The strategy, often called asymmetric saturation, was simple. Make any challenge in the strait so impossibly costly that no navy, not even the United States, would dare try. The whole doctrine was built on weaponizing geography, turning the strait into a kill box, a gauntlet of overlapping threats designed to bleed an enemy dry. The tools for this were, on paper, formidable. In our hypothetical scenario, Iran had spent years preparing for this exact moment. First, the naval mines. Intelligence in this scenario projected that Iran could deploy up to 6,000 advanced smart mines. While real-world inventories are a subject of debate, with many estimates being more conservative, a number like that in our scenario would be a monumental challenge. Next came the swarms. This scenario posits a force of over 3,000 small, fast attack craft, a number inflated for this what-if to represent a truly overwhelming threat. Many were envisioned as one-way attack drones, a naval version of a kamikaze. These boats would use shoot-and-scoot tactics, darting out from hidden coastal coves, firing their missiles, and disappearing before anyone could fire back. Backing them up were Ghadir and Fateh-class mini-submarines designed to be quiet and nearly undetectable in the shallow, noisy waters of the Persian Gulf. Perfect ambush predators. Finally, there was the missile arsenal, the real backbone of Iran's anti-access/area denial, A2/AD strategy. Our scenario imagines an arsenal of more than 2,000 anti-ship crews and ballistic missiles, a speculative figure for a worst-case situation. These were thought to be hidden in hardened bunkers dug deep into the mountainous terrain lining the coast and beyond, ready to survive a first strike and rain down fire on any fleet that dared to enter. In February 2026, our scenario kicks off. Iran holds a massive naval drill it calls Smart Control of the Strait, a full dress rehearsal for the world to see. It's important to say that no such exercise with this name was ever documented. But in our story, Tehran is broadcasting its confidence. They believe they have perfected the art of coastal warfare. They believe they've set an economic booby trap that will force the world to back down. In early March 2026, the simulation escalates. Under the cover of darkness, Iranian forces begin seeding the 2-mile-wide shipping lanes with thousands of mines. At the same time, radio warnings go out to all maritime traffic. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. To prove they're serious, a missile strikes a civilian oil tanker, a fictional event for this story. The ship, now ablaze, sends a shockwave through global markets. The effect is immediate and catastrophic. Lloyd's of London declares the Persian Gulf a war risk zone. Insurance premiums become impossible to pay. For 3 days, global shipping grinds to a halt. The world economy, so dependent on that free flow of energy, starts to seize up. Panic sets in. This is the economic booby trap Iran planned, and it looks like it's working. World leaders condemn the action. The UN holds emergency sessions, but it seems like Tehran holds all the cards. What the Iranian leadership didn't count on, however, was that the United States and its allies had also spent years planning for this exact scenario. They knew that a direct assault into the Persian Gulf, straight into the teeth of Iran's defenses, would be a bloodbath. So they had a different plan. They weren't going to walk into the trap, they were going to walk around it. The response began quietly. From bases in California and Japan, elements of the U.S. Marine Expeditionary Units and elite parachute infantry were mobilized, but they weren't heading for the Persian Gulf. Their destination was the North Arabian Sea. Carrier strike groups, led in our scenario by the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford, took up stations well outside the range of most of Iran's shore-based missiles. This was the first sign that the script Iran had so carefully written was about to be flipped on its head. We're about to enter the most intense part of this operation, where strategy and tech collide in spectacular fashion. This kind of deep dive analysis is what we do. If you're finding this breakdown interesting, take a second to hit that subscribe button. It lets us know you appreciate the work and make sure you won't miss what's coming next. Now, let's watch the trap get sprung. Iran's whole plan hinged on one thing: the enemy had to come to them. Their entire defense was layered to face an attack from the sea into the Gulf. But the Allied plan inverted this. They wouldn't fight their way in. They would dismantle Iran's capabilities from the outside. The key was something military analysts call C4ISR dominance: command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Before a single shot was fired, a silent war had already begun. A network of satellites, high-altitude drones like the Global Hawk, and stealthy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft started building a complete, real-time picture of the entire battlefield. Electronic warfare aircraft like the EA-18G Growler blanketed the region, jamming Iranian radar, cutting communication links between commanders and their troops, and feeding bad intel into their networks. Iran's digital kill chain, the ability to find a target and shoot at it, was being broken apart, piece by piece. With Iran effectively blinded and deafened, the first kinetic phase began. The suicide swarm of fast attack boats had to be neutralized. Instead of sending big naval ships into the confined waters where these boats thrived, the Allies used different tools. A-10 Warthog and Apache attack helicopters flew low-altitude, hunter-killer missions, their cannons and missiles perfectly suited for shredding small, fast-moving targets. The swarms, expecting to ambush a fleet, found themselves hunted from the air, with no effective defense and nowhere to hide. At the same time, the U.S. Navy's Littoral Combat Ships, LCS, played their part. While the platform has faced real-world criticism, these ships were designed for these kinds of cluttered, near-shore environments. They pushed into the littoral zones, using their speed and sensors to hunt down the Ghadir-class mini-submarines. Their helicopters and unmanned systems found and neutralized the subs before they could ever get in range of a major target. With the swarm and sub-threats dwindling, the focus shifted to the missile batteries. This is where stealth came in. F-35 and B-2 bombers, invisible to Iran's compromised air defenses, began surgical strikes. Their job wasn't to level mountains, but to use precision munitions to collapse the entrances to the hardened bunkers, bottling up the launchers inside. It was a complex task, but devastatingly effective. At the same time, Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from ships and submarines far out in the Arabian Sea, hit command centers, naval bases, and drone facilities. But the masterstroke of the operation wasn't just destroying hardware, it was shattering Iran's entire strategy by taking away its leverage. The target was a small dot in the Persian Gulf, Karg Island. Karg Island is the crown jewel of Iran's oil economy. While sanctions have altered export patterns over the years, Karg remains the symbolic and logistical heart of the industry, handling a dominant share of the country's crude oil exports. It's the main artery for the regime's economic lifeblood, and in our scenario, it became the primary objective. With Iran's eyes and ears in disarray, the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Unit and parachute infantry launched a swift amphibious and airborne assault on the island. In our fictional account, the seizure of Karg was met with surprisingly little resistance. The defenders, members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, were now faced with a choice. The IRGC isn't just a military force, it's a massive economic conglomerate that is estimated to control a huge portion of Iran's economy. Its leaders are, in many ways, wealthy executives as much as they are military commanders. The Allied strategy gambled that these commanders would be unwilling to risk their personal wealth and the source of their power for a fight they were clearly losing. The seizure of Karg Island proved that gamble correct. The will to fight evaporated. The IRGC missile teams trapped in their bunkers went silent. The remaining fast boats stayed in port. The blockade was broken not just by destroying military assets, but by targeting the enemy's center of gravity, its money. With Karg Island under Allied control, Iran's government lost its most critical economic asset and its main source of legitimate oil revenue. The financial shock was immediate. Checkmate. In our hypothetical story, the Strait of Hormuz reopened almost as fast as it had closed. The world watched, stunned. Iran's formidable defenses, its feared missile batteries, and its geopolitical credibility had all been neutralized in a matter of hours. The littoral trap had worked, but not in the way Iran had planned. The strait's geography was indeed a trap, but it was Iran that had been caught inside. The lessons from this simulated conflict are profound. It shows that a seemingly overwhelming advantage can be dismantled by superior intelligence, networked warfare, and a strategy that refuses to play by the enemy's rules. It highlights how dominance in the C4ISR realm can turn a powerful force into a helpless one. And most importantly, it highlights a critical vulnerability: the IRGC's dual role as both protector of the state and a massive business enterprise proved to be its Achilles heel. When forced to choose between ideological victory and protecting its economic empire, its will to fight collapsed. But as we look at the empty map in the aftermath of our scenario, a victory on paper leaves a chilling question. The operation was a stunning military success, but it would create a power vacuum in a deeply destabilized Iran. The long-term consequences of such a collapse are anyone's guess. Could something like this really happen? And if it did, what would the world look like the day after? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you want to explore more scenarios like this, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching.